Welcome to another exciting rendition of our ES6 videos. Okay, I can admit, they're probably not that exciting, but in this video we're going to be covering default parameters. So the basic syntax of a default parameter is to add an equal sign after a parameter in a function declaration that will declare the default. Default values are assigned to the parameter variable name if and only if undefined is passed to that parameter. So if null or an object or a primitive are passed to that parameter, it will not assign the default to that variable. So here's an example. I have function log params where I have a equal 5, b, c equals object. If I were to do a console.log of a, b, and c and call it with no parameters, you'll see 5, undefined, and an object output. The reason b is undefined is because I don't provide it with a default. However, I do provide 5 and an object for a and c. If I pass in 1, 1, 1, meaning that all parameters are defined, it'll output 1, 1, 1. If I do nulls, you can see it considers it a non-undefined, so it'll output null, null, null. You can also use destructuring inside parameter defaults. So to declare a default parameter on a destructured parameter, you can use function greet, and that is deconstructed, so it takes an object with a name property on it. That name can be equals to Evan, so the name equal Evan, that is the setting of the default parameter for the destructured property name on the object passed in the parameter. So if I were to pass an empty object into greet, it would destructure that, attempt to access the name property on that object, and it finds that it's undefined. It then assigns Evan to the name variable. It would output hello Evan. If I were to pass name Ellie into that same function, it would find that name is actually defined and output hello Ellie. So why do we use default parameters? Defaults are useful when a use case has clearly been defined, and for instance, if you know a rating is on a scale of 1 to 10, the default parameter should be a number between 1 and 10. It shouldn't be a string, or it shouldn't be any sort of other input. So here in this case, we're going to have a function called setRating. We're going to set rating equal to 1 if it comes in undefined. You don't have to worry about other functions that then depend on this .rating having a type issue if it's undefined. So for instance, if I were to say pass in a string in this case and say this .rating to uppercase, for instance, if I were to allow that to be undefined, I would get a JavaScript exception thrown saying that this .rating is undefined. In the event of me having a default, I can avoid that. It's also a way of documentation. ES6 is typeless, making it unknown to developers what is necessarily expected in a function call. Most code should make that part obvious, but to a new developer it may not be. By defining a default parameter as, say, an empty string, you can notate the expected data type. So if I give log number string a parameter type with an empty string for the default parameter, I know that it's expecting a string. It also prevents unexpected JavaScript errors, as I've described before. In ES5, most developers would do a define check on an argument prior to performing an operation. With ES6 defaults, an undefined can be forced to be a defined value with a proper type for the function body. So you can see here, the ES5 way syntax, I have return string or an empty string .to uppercase. So how that or is evaluated is if string is defined, it uses that value to then pass to uppercase. If it's not defined, the or operation returns the second portion of that statement, which is the single quotes. That is an empty string. In ES6, I can provide a default with that empty string, and I no longer need the string or empty string notation. So this is also helpful because somebody new to JavaScript probably doesn't know how an or operator works in that fashion. So that's pretty handy as well. So this was a short video. Default parameters are pretty straightforward. They're also extremely useful. I hope you find use for them in your day-to-day programming. And as always, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Thanks.